Hey, everybody, this is Jacob Stoops, and we are back with another episode of the Page 2 podcast. This is episode number 71, and we are cruising towards the end of the season, which ends at episode 75. If you don't know me, I am an SEO director at Search Discovery, and I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Jeff Luella, Senior Technical SEO at the Wirecutter, a division of the New York Times. Jeff, how's it going?
It's going great. Hey, howdy. Hey, everybody.
You're finally,
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to get away from that.
Nope. I might add something like, since I'm in the South now, I can be like, yeehaw.
Maybe for next season, you can
Next season, I might change it to
do the yeehaw. But for now, it's the Al Borland. He's the Al Borland of the podcasting world. And I might also add that while he did not make the 202 list of 202 SEOs to follow, according to Search Engine Journal, he made the follow-up underrated list from Alina, and I did
nice.
not make either. Did
I
not
didn't
make
even know
either.
about the first list.
Yes, so apparently there's a search engine. I hate these list things, and I'm never on them anyways, which is maybe why I hate them. Maybe I would feel differently if I was ever on them, but or maybe I wouldn't. I'd probably still hate them, but either way, Jeff is an underrated SEO to follow, according to Alina Solis, who was a previous guest on this show. So congratulations, Jeff. You did it. You made it.
Bribes do work. So
Oh, you paid her. That's what I'm forgetting to do. I've got to pay somebody to get on these lists.
I got Bitcoin to give away.
Bitcoin. What's the exchange ratio between Bitcoin and US currency these days? Or can you even exchange it for anything? Or can you just exchange it for other Bitcoin?
No, you can definitely cash in and out. It's up to like, at least yesterday it was up to like $58,000 for a coin.
Jesus.
When I bought in, it was like $3,000. So I only bought like $100 worth, but now it's like $1,200, $1,300 worth of Bitcoin now.
Good for you. Look at you.
I wish I bought a lot more back then, because then I would have, I just thought it was going to go away. I just wanted to play around. And
you don't buy it, Jeff. You mine it. Is that correct?
Yeah. No. Well, no, you just straight up buy it.
You used to mine it though, right?
You can still mine it too. And don't even ask me what that's all about, because I don't know. I just used the Coinbase app, and I have like 8 different cryptos now that I just play. Again, not knowing anything about crypto really. I just know more than people who don't know anything right now. So
I'm completely out of my depth. Like, I've taken this conversation way farther than I anticipated, and I'm already out of my depth, and just I'm using buzzwords. It's basically like when non-SEO people try to talk SEO and they get a little bit out of their depth, and they start saying things like, "Can you SEO optimize my website?" This is basically that. So I'm gonna stop now. I am actually back from vacation, and today is a very interesting day for us. Probably the first time in the history of the podcast we are interviewing 2 guests in the same day, not 2 guests on the same show, which we've done now a few times, but 2 guests in the same day. So back-to-back episodes. That's going to be a lot of talking for us today.
All good. I'm up to the challenge.
We are up to the challenge. So with that, we're going to bring on our guest. So we have Alina Benny, the SEO and content lead at Nextiva, with us today. Hi, Alina. How are you?
Hi. Thank you for having me on the show, and I'm doing good.
And Alina is actually, I think, our first guest who is joining us from India, which is pretty cool. We've done. I would say, what is it? Probably we've been 3 continents. So this would be technically our 4th continent, where we've talked to somebody. So we've done, of course, Europe and the UK. We've done the US. We've done Australia. We've done some South America. Wait, no, maybe that makes 5. So now we have Asia. So yeah, that makes 5 continents. We are going international. That's pretty exciting.
Can't wait till we get that Antarctica interview,
Yes. That's what we're shooting for next season. Maybe somebody in the North Pole, South Pole. We do shows around Christmas time. Maybe we can pull Santa Claus. You never know.
He does some good SEO. His elves do, at least.
Yeah, his elves are the best. All right. So, of course, before we dive into Alina's background, of course, and we're actually a little bit behind on the YouTube videos, and that is actually my fault. So we're about 4 videos behind. I promise I'm going to get those uploaded, but for now, the last 4 episodes have been strictly audio. That being said, we would still love it if you would subscribe to our channel. We're up over 50 followers now. We're basically a juggernaut. Although Jeff's daughter is crushing us with her robot and her animation videos. What did she get? Like 2,000? Probably it's way more by now. It's probably up to 3,000 views on one of her videos. So she's just killing it.
It's insane.
On YouTube.
And it's multiple videos now. So she's
good for her.
Is now, I would consider a YouTuber.
She is a YouTuber.
Every day. So, she posts every day.
Good. Hey, consistency is key, and that's where we're lacking. So we're going to get back to that. We do record, of course, all of our interviews, and we release them, the audio version, the video version. And we do have quite a backlog of season 2 and season 1 interviews that are not yet up there that we're going to work on releasing over the summer when we're on our break. But subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell to get notifications when we post new videos. The other thing we want to quickly talk about is, of course, Hamlet Batista's company RankSense. We want to make sure to promote that every single episode, at least for the remainder of the season. It's a really amazing company, and really kind of the core thing that RankSense does. If you haven't listened to this podcast, if you're a first-time listener, RankSense is a really amazing tool, especially if you work on agency side. Agency side comes with a lot of problems. Unique challenges. I don't want to say problems like it's a bad thing, but unique challenges. And that the biggest challenge is that you usually do not have the ability to directly make changes to your clients' websites, right? So that means that the time span for getting changes implemented, seeing good results, it stretches out because of that. Well, RankSense, that's kind of like their value proposition, right? They're a tool that allows you to kind of latch on top of the client's website and do what's called Edge SEO, which exists kind of out on the cloud. And it's basically kind of a cached copy of your site out on the cloud. And what RankSense allows you to do is make edits to a website. Things like page titles, meta descriptions, on-page content. You can inject structured data. You can do a lot of other really amazing things, and you can test those changes on the edge. You can get them implemented. It cuts implementation time down to nothing. And you can see the effects of those changes in terms of incremental traffic coming into your website. You can see bot activity. You can see how quickly they pick up the changes. It really is amazing. And then once you have enough data to prove that a particular update that you've made is valuable, you can then take that back to your development team and say, hey, development team, look, we tested this change using RankSense and it proved to be very beneficial. Can you commit this to kind of the core infrastructure of the website, and can you commit it to the regular code base as opposed to being kind of out on the edge by itself? The other awesome thing is it's really user friendly. It's literally going in and updating a Google Sheet, and through that it will update your website. Which is pretty awesome, pretty simplistic also if you're not a techie. And then the other thing that they're trialing on a beta is kind of some of the automation and machine learning, specifically snippet optimization. So if you need to, for example, if you have a client, maybe a large client that is missing a bunch of meta descriptions, right? Let's say it's an e-commerce client.
I was going to say e-commerce is
is perfect for this, right? So with e-commerce, you may not have meta descriptions, but you may have pretty robust on-page copy. So of course, the meta descriptions are somewhat important for SEO. Of course, you want to have a nice description in search results. And what their tool can do, and it's on a credit basis, is if you've got a large, I don't know, 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. I don't know where the scale stops, but if you've got a large block of meta descriptions or snippets that you need optimized or written completely from scratch for a human, I don't know, Jeff, how long would you say it would take you to write 2,000 meta descriptions from scratch?
Forever, because it's like my least favorite thing to do. So
what's forever? 2 months, 3 months, a year?
I mean, if you sit down, I figure maybe you can get 50 a day.
50 a day. That's going to take you weeks. That's going to take you weeks, right?
Totally.
And their tool, based on the machine learning aspect, and if you feed it a little bit, it can, and I believe it's done through Python, which of course Hamlet was kind of the leader in that space. It can spit out not completely perfect, but pretty good, like 90% of the way there, snippets of text, so that you can get your meta descriptions and your on-page copy optimized pretty quickly. Again, it's machine learning, right? So it's not going to be perfect. So you will still have to like do a little bit of checking. But Hamlet's big thing was efficiency. How can I do this thing faster? And that certainly would cut the lead time down from Jeff's weeks and weeks and weeks to like a day, 2 days, 3 days, maybe tops. And helps you get things done a lot quicker. So if you want to learn more about RankSense, it's just at RankSense on Twitter, ranksense.com.
I once hired somebody to write product descriptions for like 10,000 products. And trying to just imagine the burnout that someone would go through doing that. And it was just, after about 200, someone would quit. We'd have to hire someone else. They'd write about 200. And it was just like, writing that much stuff was crazy. So I kind of say there is a burnout there. And I think machine learning, if it gets you 90% there, that's great. And then just tweak the worst offenders and you save so much time.
Exactly. And of course, the other organization, we won't do the live read because we've certainly talked a lot, and we've talked a lot about them already. This season is, of course, United Search. If you want to learn more about United Search, it's just unitedsearch.org or search_United, which is a little confusing on Twitter. I always almost get it backwards, but a great organization for representation within the search industry, specifically around getting speaking experience or becoming a mentor to those who are underrepresented and looking to get speaking experience, right? So we've definitely promoted it. It's really targeted at kind of people that are more in the margins of the industry, women, BIPOC, BAME, LGBTQIA plus, and those over 55. Really targeted at anybody but me and Jeff, middle-aged white men, which are obviously.
I'm almost over 55, so it's.
You're getting pretty close to your senior discount.
Unfortunately, I can count it on my hands now. So
there you go. All right. So yes, of course, we want to promote United Search. So please go visit their website as well. Okay. So Alina, thank you for waiting patiently for us to kind of get through our little spiel that we do at the beginning of every episode, and of course our the more important stuff, the promotional stuff that we want to make sure we get the word out about. But it is your time. You are now kind of on the hot seat. Tell us a little bit about yourself. For those that don't know you, who are you? How did you get into SEO? Where'd you start?
Yeah, so as you can see, I'm based out of India at the moment. This is where I was born and brought up. I'm from Kerala. It's this state down south. I like to describe it as a more crowded version of Hawaii. Tons of coconut trees and lagoons, and way more population. But I got into SEO just about 3.5 years ago. So I'd say it's still a very fresh journey with me. I started in brand and product marketing and then made a switch to SEO when I met my current boss. It's been a fun journey. I'm still learning every day. That's the thing about SEO. I feel like you need to have a pulse on the industry. You need to have a pulse on not just your competitors, but just like concurrent industries, what everybody's doing, and just keep getting better every day. I talk to a lot of people, keep asking questions. That's me.
So what did you do before you were in marketing and SEO?
I was studying. I did my undergrad in engineering. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. I wanted to be an astrophysicist. I loved physics growing up in high school. I was really good at it. And I thought, I was one of those class nerds, and astrophysics just had Alina written all over it. And I wanted to try and see if I can do that as a career. Did electronics and communication engineering at one of Kerala's top engineering colleges. Outside of meeting my husband there and also landing quite a few side gigs with startups and content roles, I didn't get much done with my astrophysics career. It's good though that both those things happen, because we're happily married 2 years in, and all of those the freelance gigs with startups is what landed me my first full-time role at one of India's largest SaaS companies at this point. They're called Freshworks. There are about 3,000 employees today. There were 800 when I joined. And I had the amazing opportunity of joining the brand marketing team as their youngest copywriter. So working on all kinds of fun campaigns. It's a hugely VC funded company, so tons of money to spend on branding and promotion. And at that point, SEO wasn't really a huge thing at Freshworks. So I still didn't know too much about how the demand gen team at Freshworks worked. From there, I progressed to working in product marketing. We were just handpicked 5 people who were chosen to work with the CRM product, which was up and coming at that point. And it was all about just digging into customer engagement data, product UX copy, email campaigns, upsell campaigns, and all that kind of fun stuff. It got me thinking about whether or not I was becoming a generalist early on in my career. And that got me thinking about what kind of hard skills I could take up along the way. And I started looking out for content SEO roles. And back then there was nothing called content SEO. It was either just content marketing or technical SEO. And and then I found Sales Hacker, and I guess chapter 2 of my life started.
So I have to ask, with a background in astrophysics, what can you teach us about astrophysics?
Nothing really.
Nothing. Damn it,
I was just, so my undergraduate course was in electronics and communication. My husband till date makes fun of how I know nothing practically about the subject. I was top of class, I was always good at getting marks. But I'm so glad that I found my calling in marketing. It's where I'm passionate, and I can talk about it all day. I can, show people how I do what I do. But thank God I got out of engineering. I would have made a horrible, horrible astrophysicist.
I have an unhealthy obsession with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I was gonna say, Neil.
I watched too many Star Talk videos and all his Cosmos and the original Cosmos with Carl Sagan. Deep down inside, I wish I could have been an astrophysicist, except for all the studying I would have had to done. So, but no, it's cool.
I live vicariously through some of my friends. One of my friends, she's an astrophysicist in Germany. She works with the Max Planck Institute. She recently discovered the presence of CH14 in space, and she called me up and she said, "You know what? I did this fun thing. I got published, and my name's in some newsletter that talks about this." And I was like, "Wow! Well, I optimized a landing page today. That counts." And
it's two totally different things. And there are times when I feel like my job, although it pays me money, sometimes doesn't feel like as serious as a job as say a doctor or a dentist or a scientist, where they're out there in the world doing things that maybe seem like they matter. Whereas you're right, I optimized some copy. I wrote a meta description today. Hey, this enterprise that I'm working with, they got 5% more sales this year. Whatever the case may be. So sometimes I just feel like, we have to laugh at ourselves a little bit. And I have a certain colleague who Jeff will know. It's Brian Dean, not the SEO Brian Dean, but a guy named Brian Dean that we both worked with at different times, who always when there's a stressful situation with a client or a particular project, he always brought levity by saying, "Look, Jake, we're not curing cancer here. We're just doing marketing it's going to be okay. Going to be okay. But yeah, it's just funny. That you kind of use that, descriptor way of thinking about it when your friend's doing this like a really amazing Neil deGrasse Tyson-esque sort of thing. And I can't, and what was it that she found?
It's a different type of isotope of CH. It's called CH14. It was never found. Yeah, it was never found in space before this, and so she was one of the first people to have discovered it.
And you even knew the word isotopes, and I'm again completely out of my depth. So I'm just gonna back away, and we're gonna get back to back to SEO, things I know things about. Oh my goodness. So one of the things that really intrigued me about you in particular, when we do our background homework on all of our guests kind of before the show, and I don't see this often. You list some of the results that you've driven in your LinkedIn profile, right? So for example, for Freshworks, an 80% lift in brand searches, that's listed right on your LinkedIn profile. So for you, like, what was the impetus for putting results kind of out there? That's usually something I think more people should do it because I think it's a really good way to. People do it sometimes on resumes, but they don't do it in forward-facing places unless you're like a bigger company and you need to have case studies. It's usually not the individual. So I guess my question is, what made you put that out there like that? And do you think that it's helped you?
Yeah, so two reasons. One, I don't know how to do it any other way. I would rather talk about things that I have done in order to convince somebody that I am the right person for whatever they're looking for and why they're on my profile. And two, for the longest time, just because of my background, because of where I'm from and what I studied and my work ex, I think I was in my head about this. I had a hard time getting people to take me seriously about what I did at work and if I was even the right person to do or like fit the bill for maybe when I was applying for a job. And so I made it a practice, and I apply this not just on my LinkedIn profile, but whenever I'm communicating with somebody, I try to be as descriptive as possible, keep it short and concise. If talking about numbers, the best way to communicate something, then I just leave it at that instead of talking or writing like a whole entire paragraph about what I'm doing, but it doesn't convey anything. And so, yeah. And has it brought results? 100%. All of my jobs have been because of, the audience I've built and the kind of connections I've built through LinkedIn. I don't know what the impetus was back then for me to get on LinkedIn as soon as I did in college. None of my classmates were doing it. It hadn't really taken off in my part of the world back then, at least not with a younger crowd. It might have been my husband's influence, I don't know. And so, I took it seriously back then. I always wanted to keep my social profiles professional. It's a habit I started when I was 20. And so just still been, at it and still trying to make it better. And so, yeah, my entire career is based off of what you see right there. And I'm leaving it out in the open for people to see and consume in whatever they want. Take inspiration from it if you are an up-and-coming person in your career, or if you feel like you need to know what I've done so far. No questions asked, just drop by my LinkedIn and see what I've done.
Yeah, I think what I really like about it is, like, we're in the business of getting results, right? That's pretty much our entire job. Is we're going to take you from A to B. It's going to be, it's hard to predict a certain percentage, but it's going to be better than what you had before, and that's the goal. So, like, behind the scenes, especially on the agency side, we're constantly talking about this percentage increase or this thing improved, that thing improved, as a way to communicate that we're good at our jobs. But rarely will you see somebody in-house or somebody at an agency take that and make those numbers forward facing. But that can also be the impetus to get hired at another job. Of course, to move on and move up, you have to show that you're capable. And what better way to show that you're capable by like irrefutable facts? Nobody can take that away from you. You did that. And that's just not something I see very often. And it's actually surprising that you do not see that in a more forward facing, or at least more often, I should say.
Yeah, I once wrote code that took down a server full of 25 different websites. Don't put that on your resume.
No, don't do that.
That was early on in the career, I've grown since then.
Don't
loop
worry.
Commands could be infinite loops, could be a pain,
I think like 16 or 17 years ago, when I first started out as a web designer, I once, I didn't know the difference between client side and server side source code. So I once, when managing a client's website, just copied and pasted the actual like front end source code and put it in the back end and broke everything. The client called later that day going like, why my website doesn't work? Why is it broken? It's not like, it's completely broken. And I had no idea, and I broke their website. So not putting that out there either. That was very early on in Jake's career. Don't trust him to manage websites.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. All right. So Alina, you went from Freshworks, and then you moved on to Sales Hacker, and take us kind of up to your current role at Nextiva.
Yeah, I think I have to give you some context about what happened at Sales Hacker as an introduction. So I was their first ever content marketing manager hire. They didn't really have a full-fledged marketing team before then. So my former boss, who is also my current boss, Gaetano, I knew him from my first works times. We'd worked on a couple of partnerships together with, because I was working for the CRM product. And so we knew all of the B2B sales blogs out there. We were looking for partnerships, and Sales Hacker at that point had one of the largest B2B audiences that we could tap into. And so, he knew of me. We had a couple of conversations, and we had that partnership going. And when he put out that job description for their first ever content marketing manager, it was at least, I think, a few months into me thinking about switching roles. And I'd almost given up because, again, I don't know if you know this about the marketing industry, and especially when you're trying to break into the North American marketing space, you get turned down a lot because of your location. And I just couldn't, try and convince people that I can bring value. There are a lot of preconceived notions and biases about what marketers from India can do or cannot do. And so Sales Hacker came at the right time, January 2018. I saw this job description. I still had my full-time job at Freshworks, but then I had 5 days to do this test project that they had given me. I had never worked with an SEO tool before this, and so I called up a friend who knew of some tools, and then we figured out how to get me just like a free trial for 7 days, and I did that project, the test project. After 8 hours of full-time work, I would come back home, spend 4 hours or 5 hours, and it was probably the most challenging 5 hours till date. And at the end of those 5 hours, I created a deck with very similar branding that Sales Hacker had that they used for their webinars. And I was really excited because it's safe to say it blew their minds. They really liked it, and they offered me the role on the spot on that presentation call that I had with them. And I worked there for about 8 months, kind of fine-tuning everything that Gaetano had laid in place to build the contributor blog up from scratch. It was a very exciting role because I was getting to work with close to 100 B2B SaaS companies of all sizes. They all wanted to publish posts on our website. They all wanted to get it on newsletters and webinars and things like that. And we get acquired by Outreach.io. I didn't see that coming. And this was announced at our retreat in New York at that point. And it was really exciting because I'd never directly been part of an acquisition or an acqui-hire before this. And it was just a team of 5 members. And to be able to be a part of that was amazing, and to know that you were valued. But then I hear that Gaetano wouldn't be continuing. He said, he found a cooler opportunity at Nexiva, and that him and our CMO at that time, Yaniv, had been chatting for a while. And so the next thing I knew, I hopped on a flight to Arizona, and a couple of conversations later, I was the second hire on their demand gen team. And so we've been building it from scratch for the last 2.5 years. Today, we're about 8 marketers, amazing people, handpicked, the best of the best from the industry. I love all of my coworkers. In the beginning, I think about 1.5 years, I spent again building our blog from scratch. It wasn't SEO focused at all, and so just creating all those processes, borrowing all our best practices from my sales hacker time and bringing it to Nexiva. When we started, it was just about less than 10K monthly visits to the blog, and today we have, I think, over 250,000 per month. And so just bringing all that audience, again, that was the first part of my job. And then I moved on to more of the mid-funnel, bottom of the funnel activities. I entirely own all of our organic and paid landing pages today, the entire content creation process and production process for those pages, testing them, optimizing them, conversion rate optimizations for those pages, and then QA and getting it live, working with design and development day in and day out. And so that's where we are today with Nexiva.
And you brought up a very, very interesting point, right? So a lot of SEOs, my experience lies mostly on agency side, so I cite that quite often. We're working more in a funnel than I think most agencies would like to admit. I think it's search discovery. We do a pretty good job of communicating across teams, but there's still certain elements of kind of working in a funnel. And definitely at my previous agencies, it was a lot more walled off between teams. So you're kind of on the ground, and you had said you were leaning towards being a generalist. So tell us what it's like to balance all of the other non-SEO stuff in terms of like the percentage of your time and focus. What amount of focus goes into paid landing pages? That's kind of one of your core responsibilities, or testing. And now you're lower in the funnel, of course. So you're probably looking at conversion rate optimization and figuring out how to get users to convert, maybe even up to post-purchase activities. So how much of your time is spent on SEO, and how much of your time is spent on some of the other stuff, and how do you get all that stuff to work together in harmony?
Right. I'd say it's a good 50-50 because I enjoy doing both. And the nice thing about Nexiva is that, the sky is the limit. We still have so much potential to grow. We're a lot younger marketing wise compared to most of our competitors. Ring Central, for example, has been doing what we're doing for over a decade. And so we have 10 years of catching up to do in terms of pages and copy and rankings and, even revenue. And so that's a great challenge to be up against. And the nice thing about having an SEO background, or knowing how to work or make SEO work for you, and then also collaborating with all these different teams, is that you get a lot of clarity on what might work. I mean, that's the job of an SEO fundamentally. Like, you have an eye for what might grab attention and how to bring audience. And so combining that with working with development and working with the paid ads team, the designers, or product marketing, it's very interesting because you're bringing a perspective that nobody else has. It's very easy, and I know this because during my time at Freshworks, I didn't know how to tap into that power of SEO, or like thinking about it from a very top of the funnel, high level angle. And so you'd assume that, just because if we build out these 10 features that your competitors have, you're just gonna immediately have the same kind of traction that your competitors are getting. Like, there were times when we would, in terms of feature parity, have the exact same things that some of our competitors would have, but our signups wouldn't go up. And so being able to be in the trenches with all those teams, with the extra context that we have as SEO folks, I think is amazing. You're telling them it's not enough that you build, it's important to build and promote and get eyeballs on this. And that's how you ultimately, what everybody wants is to increase your bottom line and get that net new MRR. And that's what we're doing, you know.
Yeah, that's funny. And I think we'll probably get into it. So our core topic today is going to be SEO and the role of content marketing, content strategy, however you want to say it. And it's an interesting concept that you touched on that I think we're going to touch on again, is that like optimization isn't done when you quote unquote optimize a page or a certain section of the site. It's kind of a never ending thing, and it works best when supported with other activities as opposed to just by itself. So I've got a couple more questions, and then I do want to move on to the core topic. So with Nextiva, you mentioned being kind of more kind of fresh in the space, not as established as some of your competitors. So that's a pretty similar position to many that would apply probably to many newer companies, even startups in many other spaces. So when you're in an industry where you're facing well-established players or people that have just been around for a long time, or in some cases you're in an industry, especially if you're e-commerce with juggernauts like Amazon, Walmart, Target, how do you compete? How do you catch up and make up for that lost time?
Yeah, and this is funny because I've always worked in teams that were up against giants. So during my Freshworks time, my CRM product was competing against Salesforce. Our entire campaign, we did this interesting campaign when I was working for the brand team and also kind of moonlighting with the product marketing team. It was a bus campaign around Dreamforce in 2017. Just amazing messaging. It was a really fun creative project to work on, and that's how we drove those direct brand visits. There was like an 80% lift in just 30 days of us launching that campaign. Of course, it was extremely expensive, but Freshworks could get away with it because of all the funding that we received. And so it just really depends, Freshworks at that point, again, was a startup. It's on its way to being an enterprise. But then if you are well-funded, you can use that ammunition to build your brand, spend a lot of money on all these billboards and below the line targeted sort of campaigns. And when the demand gen team helped us understand the impact of all that external activity into how it impacted the digital space, I found it really difficult to understand that. I was like, how do you know? How are you measuring whether or not websites visit went up? How do you differentiate between direct versus like branded versus non-branded type of search into the website and things like that? And then moving to Nextiva, again, we're up against some of the more established players. And what I think what's really important is that you work on your basis and fundamentals, which is really interesting that you should ask again about this, because that's what we've been doing over the last 2 years at Nextiva, kind of catching up. So it's a lot of your content gap analysis and like what are the top money keyword landing pages that you can build to funnel leads into your sales machine. But then, where most teams, I feel like it starts getting old is when you only do that. If you're only doing competitor analysis and if you're only focused on catching up. And so once you've kind of established, like for example, in 2018, when I started working on the blog with Nextiva, we wouldn't immediately rank for VoIP terms, which is ironic because the product itself is a VoIP company. And but today, even if we did publish, we don't have to publish a massive guide, or we don't have to do the whole skyscraper technique. If we do publish something around VoIP, we do rank in a couple of weeks because we took those 2 years to build that authority about a topic. And I think that's the goal. It shouldn't be to beat your competitors with every single exact match target keyword or anything like that. It is that when at that point where you can get search engines to recognize you for your website and your core offering, you stop there, or you kind of try and shift your focus to, okay, what's unique about our company and what can we do that's different, and focus on those things, And I think our differentiating factor at this point is that we're still agile. I'm up against teams that are 200 members or 300 members large at like companies like Dialpad or 8x8 or Ring Central. We're a team of 8 we still operate on weekly sprints, very much like a startup inside a mid-sized company. And so I love that, we're very flexible. We can think about a project on Monday, get it out of the door on Friday. I don't see that happening with larger companies. And so that's our recipe right there. I hope they're not listening.
No, that's so true. Jeff, go ahead. You've got
I was gonna say, like, how close do you work with like customer service teams and stuff like that to help you find out where your content's going? I think a lot of times that I've had, I've never worked in a company like yours, but I've helped from, as an SEO from a consultant side. And I was always like, your customer service people have the best research because people are calling them and complaining. What are they complaining about? How can we write that so if someone's searching for it, like, we show up for it? And I know we could probably do that with keyword just or looking on the web, but are you close to the customer service team, or are they, is it, I've been in companies where, like, no way am I getting near those people. So I would always have to, like, send, like, sneaky emails out. I just didn't know how close you were to them.
Yeah, I mean, every team is accessible here. That's also the nice thing about just asking at a company this size. Everybody still operates with that scrappy kind of mindset, which is really cool. And so not just customer service, we also make it a habit of reaching out to account executives and, like, general sales organization, because they have so much information on what's out there and they can validate ideas. We already, like you said, with keyword research, you do have a general sense of what's going to work, but then being able to prioritize that, you need to lean on internal teams and the knowledge that they have. So, yeah, we're able to do that on a pretty decent level. I wouldn't say it's a perfect world, but it's better than a lot of, it's better than a lot of large organizations.
The great thing, and from my limited experience working at a startup, is that startups are based on the idea of being able to pivot, right? Almost to the point of pivoting when pivoting isn't always necessary as, like, a habitual thing. But when you're working against a small company, or you're a small company working against a big company, you may never be able to equal their brand equity, but you may be able to find your pockets where you can dominate and you can be more nimble than they are. Those big companies have months and months and months of red tape just to do something very simple. Just like, hey, I want to update the copy on that page. Okay, I'll see you in 6 months, and then it'll be updated. Whereas at a startup, you can get things done a lot quicker. And that has its advantages for sure. So before we move on to the kind of the core topic, I've got one last question, and you've kind of touched on it a few times, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I think it may come off the wrong way. So I hope it doesn't come off the wrong way. It's not meaning to come off the wrong way, but from a US out point of view, with you being in India, there's, I think, a very common viewpoint, and I think we've all heard it, like, hey, we're going to outsource this to India, and then cue all of the, eye rolls, whatever. I think that there's a perception from the US looking outward that there's, when that happens, it's usually the cost savings measure, and there's a reduction of some sort, a trade-off in quality. Now, from you, and I'm not saying any of that's true. I don't know. From your viewpoint, you also mentioned not being taken seriously. So having never had the opportunity to speak to somebody who does SEO from India on this podcast, I think this is just kind of the open platform for you to kind of share your viewpoint as somebody from India who does SEO. You've been in the US for some time, so I think you're probably familiar, at least to some degree, with the way US people think. So I'm going to stop talking now. This is your platform. Tell us, I guess, about your viewpoints on SEO and in India.
Yeah, I mean, you're on point with the perception of cheaper labor and where quality is compromised. Marketing wasn't one of those industries that people looked at when they thought of outsourcing. It's only recently that you'll see a lot of link building agencies or whatever you can do at scale, ship that off to this part of the world. And the problem with that is that, again, with quality, and everybody just gets a bad rap at the end of the day, and I was in that group, and I can backtrack to like one moment in my life where I was interviewing back in 2017, and I was pretty determined to find roles for me with global teams. I don't know if you can call me a coconut, but I'm white inside and brown outside, but I don't know. Just something about having, I have family on the East Coast, and I've been with a few volunteering opportunities that I've had. I was in the US a few times and for events, and I wanted to work with teams. It just seemed a little more straightforward. In India, unfortunately, even if you're working at a startup, there are lots of layers, lots of, I don't know, bureaucracy that I don't want to deal with. It's just not in my blood. And so I found, in your words, US people to be a little more straightforward in that sense, at least inside like the SaaS world or inside the startup world. And so while I was determined to land a role in the startup world back then, I'm not going to name names, but for a very famous document signing company, I was interviewing for a role. I remember hopping on this call with their head of marketing at that point, and I made it very clear to him, it's all on my resume. My resume back then, it didn't have as many numbers about traffic and keywords and SEO, but it did have about, my brand and product marketing work. And so he had context about what I had done, and yet on the call he was like, "Do you have experience with Google Ads?" I said, "No." "Do you have experience with SEO?" I said, "No." Have you done any sort of website optimization?" I said, "No." And then he's like, "So what can you do?" And for a second there, it was like the 2 years of work that I put in, busting my head off, working over 12 hours, because I needed to prove myself. It was as though it didn't mean anything. And then the second part of that whole terrifying story, which now I look back and laugh at, is that so they had an office in Eastern Europe and they had an office in the US. And he asked me, so what's your plan? Like, we don't have a remote work setup at this point. You would either have to move to Europe or the US. So what are you thinking? I'm like, I'm fine moving to wherever, as long as I get to work closely with whichever team is hiring me. And he said, "Okay, it just sounds like you're trying to get out of India, And I was like, do you have any context on what it's like to be a marketer in India and try to break into this industry? At that point, there were like only less than 10 startups that I thought was exciting to work at in India. And there are all these biases, and it made me so furious. And I was almost crying when I hopped off that call. I decided that day that it was on me to like find companies and people and teams that I wanted to work with who would appreciate where I came from and didn't throw things like, oh, native English speaking or remote, but in the US, you see that a lot today, but like give people a shot. You never know what people are going to, or how people are going to surprise you. And I know it sounds very idealistic, but it really isn't. And so a lot of times when, I put myself out there like this, it's also my way of showing folks back home that, hey, I'm still doing part-time remote, sitting out of India and sitting out of the US. And it's been difficult to establish my niche and like get US salaries for myself, or like be taken just as seriously as the rest of my team. And I don't know exactly what I did right, but a series of good decisions, and here we are, that's what I got to say about this. It's definitely a topic close to home. Something we also need to work on more, because I feel like there's a lot of untapped talent in India. It's not just about your outsourcing customer support or your development teams for, salaries. You could hire one person in the US, you could get like an entire team in India. But, it's time that you treated people in a more meritocratic way.
Yeah. I think it's got to be tough. And it's interesting. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia about 5 years ago, and my kids' elementary school is 60% Indian right now. So it's the majority of the school is Indian. So there's a lot of, it's great. I love Indian food. And it's like, I have it like Indian shopping centers now and things like that. So I love going in there, but it's, I think very early on in my development career, and that was like 20 something years ago, I worked with my like first Indian team, and there is that shock kind of value. There's a little bit of a language barrier, even though we're both speaking English. I speak bad American English. And but I think it's like as we grow closer as like internationally and things, I see that smoothing over. Like I'm lucky that I learned at a very young age, and because I was doing development, that it's like, you know, there's a billion people in India that are just like this. And it's like, it's not, it stinks that it's like, oh, we're just going to send that work to India because it's cheaper and they can work 24 hours a day. It's like, I've worked on teams where, you know, in the US, we worked these 12 hours, and in India, they worked those 12 hours because we could shift it that way. And I thought that worked really well as a team, because then you could have a 24-hour development cycle. But I've worked for companies where they just fired their whole development team and offshored to India, just to get a cheaper rate. And I feel bad. I mean, it's not that I feel bad, that I feel that the teams in India are being underpaid, and that's like something that I know is it's tough. And even as India's prices raise, like you see them going to like Romania now, or going to other countries that are, and I guess it's just people who are just really worried about the bottom line of things. But I really try my hardest to, like, whoever I'm working with, to be, you know, super open. And it's like, I had my first Samoas when I was 20, and I had my first, like, I loved it. And I love the experience of working with everybody. So yeah, no, I hope things like that get better and easier for you. And you know, I hope America turns their eye on that a little bit more, and, you know, realizes that we just, you know, we're all the same. You know, it's just one of those where I feel it's something like, I wish there's something I could do about it. And one day when I become a billionaire, I will. But as of now, I'm struggling myself. So
yeah. So I promised only one more question, but this time really only one more question. And it's fun fact, India is number 5 on our top countries list in terms of listeners, representing, as of today, this moment, 3.6% of our audience. So hello, everybody from India listening. Thank you. But I would ask,
that was all Alina listening. She just
right. Yeah, thank you. I guess, what are some of the cultural differences that somebody on our side of the pond, so to speak, needs to take into consideration? You know, other than, you know, I would say I have limited experience. I did have an Indian roommate in college, but that's about the extent of it. And I can't imagine that. I don't know how much familiarity, you know, most people in this country have with Indian culture. So I think that that's a huge component where I think we on our side need to understand a little bit better. So I would just ask about that. What are some of the cultural differences, and how can we on our side be better?
Right. I would say the most confusing things, so even for my coworkers to kind of wrap their heads around, was there are lots of different types of India. You know, anytime I mention I'm from India, or like in the beginning when I joined some of the US teams that I worked on, it's either like immediately people think about Mumbai, they think about the slums, they think about, you know, Reliance, or like the Ambanis. So I keep telling them, like, India is so many different things. You've got on the east, you've got the, you know, rainforest. On the north, you've got snow. Down south, you've got, like, you know, places like Kerala, which is like coconut trees and lagoons and lakes. And you know, you go to the west and you've got deserts. And so just how geographies change, so do cultures. That's one really fascinating thing about India. 28 different states, and we've got 28 different types of like food, and like 100 different languages and like variations. And so each Indian you meet, they're going to be different. You know, I'm from Kerala, and so this is predominantly a Christian state. And the reason, you know, some people, again, they ask me, like, why do I have a neutral accent? It's because of the school that I went to. It's one of the nicest schools in this part of the world. My parents, it's not that they were well off, it's just that I was a huge priority for them growing up, and then they wanted me to get the best education that they could afford me. And so I guess if you were to talk about competitive advantages, that's what it was for me, that my communication wasn't a barrier, and that I could meet the rest of the world halfway without having to feel insecure about how I come off. And going to high school in a place like I did. I grew up watching the same shows that every other kid over there did. And so just kind of that cultural shock for me was a lot less too. I already had a whole bunch of things that I could relate to and speak about. And so that I think is a missing component with most of India that you're used to, because they don't know what your common ground is. You can't crack the same kind of jokes. You don't know what the like the local lingo is or anything like that. And so you just, it's kind of awkward, and you don't know what's rude, what's nice. But I would just say that, just keep an open mind. Like I said, India is so big. I still haven't been to most parts of India, and it's amazing. Every different state has so much to offer. The people are different. The way that we greet each other is different. Our cultures are different. And so, and again, like things like, when I was getting married, people were like, oh, did your husband come riding in a horse? And I was like, that's not the only type of wedding. I had a church wedding because I'm a Christian. And so I feel like we, especially like my entire group of friends, we were so obsessed with the West growing up, like all the same shows. Like Hannah Montana was a star when I was growing up, but I knew so much about America even before I got there. And so I feel like some amount of reading and like just understanding how the world works on this side, that'll go a long way. People, the reason why this topic is close to my heart. You got a lot of these link builders that keep spamming folks these days, like, do you want links higher? You know the messages. I don't need to repeat this, but I keep telling people, like whenever I can, the only difference between them and me is the fact that I went to a better school, and that's it. And that it changed everything for me. So just cut them some slack. They're just trying to do their jobs,
Yeah.
It as you're describing that, you made me think it sounds a lot like the United States, where you've got different cultures: East Coast, West Coast, Middle America, Northern America, super cold, Southern United States. And I just experienced this super warm, I go 4 hours on a plane, it's 90 degrees, 4 hours the other way, I come back, it's 30 degrees. So maybe we're not all that different.
And then there's Florida.
Then there's Florida. All right. So Jeff, let's jump into the core topic. Let's do it.
Our core topic today is content strategy, SEO. And that's, I think we've kind of hinted all around that, and probably talked about some of this stuff, but, so Alina, working at, in-house, I think you guys do like telecom stuff, or yeah, I think that's what I read it was. What is kind of some of the most important aspects of SEO that you're doing there, or content SEO in general? Overall, like what is kind of some of the work are you doing? Are you optimizing, product pages, or is it strictly like outreach, or not outreach, but like marketing to like kind of to push out some of the content?
Can I jump in really quickly before you answer that question? It's really funny, Jeff is like a super technical, he's like the technical SEO's technical SEO. So it's really funny to watch him squirm a little bit asking about content and its relation to SEO.
Is it really important?
I just wanted
content really important?
I'm sorry. I just had to comment on that. You sounded really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things that it's funny because I work at a company now where like content is number one, and it's like we have 80 editors and writers, but I am like, I write code. So so I mean, I was wondering like how, like, what are some of the types of content that you're writing for the site, and like the important aspect of, I'm sure there's different styles of content for different reaches, and just wondering a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're a cloud phone system company, which means everything that we do is digital. And the primary way that we get leads for our sales team is through our website. And, when I joined Exiva, we didn't have too many landing pages. We had, I think, 2 money landing pages that we were sending both paid traffic as well as, trying to build organic traffic to. The blog was mostly just kind of from a very editorial perspective. It didn't have any SEO focus whatsoever. The different, just things like the navigation, trying to figure out like what's most important from a product marketing perspective, and mapping that to what's important inside the sales funnel, and what actually brings the higher ticket size deals into the pipeline. So I think I had the cool opportunity to start working with all of that. Like the world was my playing field. I could decide what I wanted to do. And I think that's a really cool part of being in a demand gen team as well. You're not siloed into doing just one thing. You can pick up and do whatever you wanted. And so we chose to work on the blog initially, take it from just kind of like a topic dump area into, because we had all these opinion pieces that never ranked, like 0 page views, 0 backlinks, 400 word articles that we had massive content audits later. we scrapped around 1,000 different posts. And so building that entire blog strategy from scratch, whether it's thinking about how to map those different keywords into what's important for product, what's important for sales, what's important just to get traffic so that people know and associate Nextiva with voice over IP content, and recognize that we are a legitimate source of content. Because there's a lot of spam in our world too. We've got a lot of these aggregator review websites that just like dump 3,000 word articles that just they're gonna go in a loop, like the infinite loop you were talking about. It just doesn't go anywhere. And so that was one huge component of the work that we do here, is to focus on audience acquisition, and the blog is our ultimate tool for that. We've tweaked our process a lot over time. There wasn't a lot of cross collaboration with other teams in the beginning. It was just one designer and me. We're trying to figure out what the best way is to get things out, and our WordPress it's not the best. So a lot of things I had to code it in myself and like get into the HTML editor. And if I needed like call outs or like, testimonial sliders or just like a table of contents in the beginning, all of it, I needed to go build it myself. And which was a fun experience, because it was so nice. Just with 2 months of working on that day in and day out, we saw traffic go, it was like 100%, 200%, 300%. At the end of, I think, back then, 6 months into it, we'd seen blog traffic go up by 500%.
Wow.
And that's when we decided, okay, you know what? Step 2 of the plan, let's start working on our product landing pages. Because back then it was just forms and content that wasn't really doing anything. And figuring out like what are even the top keywords that we should go after. Just splitting PPC and organic and making it 2 different journeys on its own, and just and then when you're only stuck with 2 pages, you've got 100 different pages to build. And the kind of the annoying thing about VoIP is that Google still hasn't figured out that cloud phone system, VoIP phone system, cloud business phone system, and cloud VoIP and cloud PBX are the same thing. The SERPs are so different. And so I had my job cut out for me. I'm sitting into trying to figure out, what's going to give us the most bang for our buck when we're building out all these different exact match keywords. And in the beginning, like I said, like our goal was to make sure that both search engines as well as users could associate Nextiva with a high quality product. And so I was shipping out 1 landing page every week in the beginning of me taking over those organic landing pages. And then phase 3 of that was again building on top of those pages, going back into Hotjar or looking at heat maps, looking at conversion funnels inside of Salesforce and seeing what pages are bringing in the most leads, where are people abandoning the page, do we make it shorter, longer, more CTAs, lesser CDAs, do we need pop-ups, things like that. So a whole bunch of content optimization on top of the existing content, lots of CRO, lots of testing, page speed improvements. I gotta say, it's not as important as everybody says it is, but especially in the product world, I'd say it's a little more important inside like the publishing world, maybe, because people are just gonna leave it if it doesn't load. But for us, ours are not the fastest pages, but it still gets the job done. And then phase 4 was kind of integrating paid marketing into the mix and trying to see how we can work more closely with them, because we had an established process. From having nothing, we today have a marketing project manager who helps us fill out dev intake forms. So they need everything before I raise a request and ask them to get something up on staging. We've got lots of tools we use for QA and for feedback. The entire design process is so much more easier. We've got intake forms, which, when other teams back in the day, I remember they used to hit up saying, hey, Alina, I need an email copy for this sales campaign. Or like somebody else would say, I need a 1-pager. And so instead of it all being random asks from here and there, it's so much more streamlined today. I love looking back and just looking at that progress. Everything that we do, at least from a demand gen perspective, lives inside of Asana. We're sticklers for organization, and that nicely fuels my OCD. Thanks to my boss, it's amazing the setup that we have inside there. Everybody's accountable. We work with bi-weekly sprints, and yeah, I think phase 5 for us is stepping into the ABM world, taking our knowledge of all of this, top of the funnel activities. We then moved into testing and CRO, and now we're trying to take all of that information, combining it with, all the leads that were brought into marketing, and then trying to figuring out how we can actually nurture them over time, because all leads are not good leads. And so just because they're not ready to purchase doesn't mean they won't in the future. So just thinking about activities and what we can do to keep nurturing them over time. If it's now, 6 months later, or even a year later, how do we go about doing that? So that's kind of like the full funnel activity that we do at Nextiva.
That's great. That definitely feels like a full funnel of things, and it's way better than if I ran it would be. If I ran it, just be like, just go to Keyword Planner, grab some words, let's write some content. I would be a little more technical than that. But
I have a quick question. So I work on a client that is very similar to Nextiva, not entirely doing the same thing, but like you mentioned some words like cloud PBX, which there might be a little crossover. And I think the big challenge with those types of terms they're very product focused terms, right? Or solution focused, I would say. And when you look at actual search results for these types of terms, most of what is in the rankings it's aggregators, right? Third-party sites that just talk about almost like rating the different actual providers that tend to rank really, really well. Kind of like the Yelp, except for telecommunications. And if it's not that, it's really, really high funnel, like what is, in this case, cloud PBX. It's very high funnel stuff, right? And the problem with high funnel content, in order to rank, you typically have to create a really long piece of content, because that's what's ranking. So if you want to have a chance to rank, you have to create some sort of long form content. Problem with that, like you said earlier, doesn't necessarily convert well. And then the flip side of that is, okay, well, I want my product or solution page to be ranking for this thing. How can I get it to be able to compete with these queries with, the types of content that are long form, but not completely overwhelm the product page with content? And it's like this delicate balance between, do I have enough content to rank, but not enough, but not so much that you're overwhelming the needs of an actual product page, which is more focused on features and conversion, and not necessarily always high funnel sorts of information, right? So that's the question I would ask you: is have you also run into that, and like how do you balance that? Because for me, quite honestly, it's a pain in the ass to try to do. And I just, now that I have somebody else who's kind of doing a very similar thing, I would just ask you that question as well.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to be on the agency side for a client with that kind of a SERP to deal with, because there's only so much you can recommend from a search perspective. For us, though, because we're on in-house teams, the nice thing about that is that's when we think about affiliate marketing. That's when we sit and think about our priorities. Like I have the freedom to decide, okay, if Cloud PBX, for example, hypothetically is turning, say, residential, the SERPs looking like I'm competing with Uma or Vonage, where it doesn't make sense for me to keep pushing my B2B product. I can take the call on saying, okay, no, I'm not going to go chase that. No explanation required, because people trust the autonomous system that we've built so far. Number two, if it is purely aggregator focused, again, we retreat unless, of course, we've got some type of affiliate setup going on with them, where we can honestly try and get our, position ourselves favorably among the different competitors in the space. And three, again, I see a lot of aggregators do this thing where they've got ratings up top and they've got like a whole article underneath. On SERPs like that, I'm better off trying to find out less difficult SERPs and trying to grab those before our competitors or aggregators get to it than trying to beat them at something that they've done for 5 years. Which is where, having a nimble team comes in, because people, it's just getting smaller. Everybody's doing the same thing. You can see it from the meta descriptions, you can see it from the page layouts. It's the same regurgitated thing over and over again. The only two ways you'll stand out is if your product's strong enough to have a different kind of messaging over time, and it can speak for itself, and you can combine your SEO treasure trove with that product-led angle. And two, you're nimble enough and you're brave enough to kind of venture into the buzzworthy world of SEO, where you're kind of doing journalistic content. You're not afraid of brand partnerships. You're trying to leverage, your cool reports and surveys that you've done and package it in a way that is still search friendly. These two things, if you do, you're never gonna run out of ideas, because it's not available on any machine. You can't just plug it into any tool and try and come up with it. But if you're going to continue to only focus on, this CPC seems really high, or like this target keyword has thousands of searches every month, so I'm going to go ahead and create a piece of content or like a page and then try and beat everybody and get 100 links to it with a link building agency, that's going to run out real fast. You're going to end up spending thousands of dollars and realizing that it was all just to get yourself on page 2 at the very top, which is not doing anything.
Sounds like our podcast.
I was going to say, get you a podcast. So I have a question about how much, it's part of your strategy is there's on-site content, then there's like off-site content. How much, is there a split between that you work on, or are you strictly doing all your content on-site?
I would say 95% of it is on-site. With our affiliate partnerships, we try to be as hands-off as possible, because it gets tricky. The player who pays the most gets the most favorable result, and that's not something that we fully encourage with the internal team. So whatever is the healthy middle ground, but anything on top of that, nah. So I'd say like 95% is on-site content.
That's good. And then I guess we'll trying to think of my next question. So with many Google searches leaning more towards like high funnel informational content, how do you balance the information with like informational versus content that you need to sell, like selling content, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, sure thing. For the longest time, we were a marketing first company, because like I said, not zero, but like very small search discoverability, and trying to tip that scale in our favor. The biggest thing that I learned is that there's only so much marketing can do. And I think that's the same thing with SEO. There's only so much SEO can do. It can get people to your website, but what they do on it heavily hinges on your product. And so, which is where I think my background in product marketing and a little bit of brand is exciting, because a lot of SEO folks don't know how to leverage that information or work closely with product managers and try to get that information from them. Well, it could be simple things like, get me access to your feature launch schedule. What's that looking like? Do we think about how to amplify the product and tie that down back to SEO? So those are the kind of ideas that I think will start working. Again, the same thing that I mentioned, being product led while being SEO aware is, I think, the ultimate. That's like utopia for me, I mean, to give you an example, and it's so ironic how companies who are product led aren't SEO focused. So for example, Zoom, everybody knows Zoom. Zoom's sales just went up, I don't know by how much % over the past year. It's become a noun. It's become a verb for everything that you want to do in the digital space. Imagine if they had folks who were super focused on search, building just search friendly content every day. Their website authority is so high they get away with doing anything. And so same thing goes for companies like Intercom. You think chatbot, you think Intercom, but I don't know what it is about companies that size. They just don't have a lot of those folks.
It's funny. It's like we live in the same world a little bit when it comes to marketing can only do so much. And there have been times sometimes where I've thought, like, not that I don't want money and revenue coming in on the marketing side, or on the agency side, but there are times where I've thought to myself, it may, like, some of that money might be better invested in actual product development, because there are times in my career where I felt like I'm pushing to a bad product, where it would be nice if their product was improved. It would make my job certainly a lot easier. Yeah,
I mean, this
and
is
that's a tough
question.
position. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that classic question, and we got this a lot in the beginning, but not so much anymore. But because traffic was growing at such a fast pace, just like phenomenal. I was telling you 500% over 6 months, but was there a 500% growth in sales? No. And so the question was, why are we investing so much in search? We're not able to get direct value from that. And that's a question, unfortunately, that we need to talk about internally. You need to make sure that the product is where it's at, and that whenever you do have messaging around something that you're going to sell, I mean, copywriters can do an amazing job trying to position it whatever way, but the moment somebody signs up for a demo, then it's out of our hands. The product's got to do its own talking. Yeah. And so which is where I feel like a lot of SEOs again get a lot of bad rap, because all traffic and no leads or no sales, which is again why I think being in demand gen is such a cool job, because you can be really close to the sales funnel and get a really cool idea. I mean, clear idea of what's really going on, what's driving your bottom line.
Yep. Awesome. So I think we're going to finish up this section, but I am going to ask one final question there. Is that do you have any parting thoughts on content strategy and SEO overall?
Overall, I think just from like a B2B SaaS perspective, I would just say stop copying your competitors. It's been done. Everybody sees right through your BS. If companies took the plunge and got a little more creative every now and then, that's what they would believe in. I mean, that's why companies like Basecamp, they stand out. You go to their website, it's not a bunch of keywords stuffed in. They talk about what they're changing, but it's so difficult to take that plunge, because you've got investors, you've got CXOs breathing down your neck, you've got people that you're answerable to every 30 days asking you questions like, why aren't the lead numbers going up? Where am I, where's the month-over-month growth on this? We've invested $100K in all of these different marketing activities that you said, but where are the results? And so if you would take at least 50% or maybe 20% of the time that you spend on competitive intel and trying to get that information, building those keyword gap spreadsheets, and build out one idea that you think you can spend a quarter on with your development design team and push that out. Take your time with it. You're gonna make more impact than you think. And we've done a few of those projects, and I 100% back them.
Yeah, I've got one follow-up question to that. Some businesses are too conservative, right, when it comes to being different than everybody out there. How do you kind of run that strategy or kind of approach, line of thinking? Because it really is kind of a culture shock for some businesses to be more aggressive in the marketplace with their positioning. How do you convince a conservative business to become less conservative and more aggressive with their marketing strategy or their brand strategy?
I mean, usually conservative equals very large size, and there's so many stakeholders. You're probably not even talking to the decision maker at that point. You're probably talking to the head of marketing, who has no say in how the product is positioned, because the CEOs, the CEO is probably thinking about it at 2 a.m. like, this is what we should call the product, and like texting the CMO, and the CMO then talks to the 5 other layers under him, and then that's who you're talking to. So I would say there's no amount of convincing you can do. The only thing you can do at that point is try to milk it as much as you can, which is, keep bringing in all that extra traffic, get all that top of the funnel traffic as much as you can, show them the numbers, show them the power of SEO and what it can do, and then make your, that's what we did in the beginning, because we did have trouble trying to get buy-in in the beginning about what we need to change at the end of the funnel. And so we would show how numbers were increasing. We're like, what we're doing, it's impacting things in a positive way. It's working. It means we're on the right track. But if you want to see change, and if you want to see the MRR number go up, you need to make some changes, and those are going to be hard decisions, and that's on you. And so, but if you are an outsider, for example, you're working at an agency, I wouldn't waste any time on it. Hammer that top of the funnel content, get that out, get them as much as traffic as you can, and get out where you can,
Get out while you can. Famous last words. All right. So let's move on to Twitter questions of the week. And this week was a little bit of an odd one because we're literally interviewing two people in the same day.
Yeah.
So normally we get 4, 5, 6, 7 questions, but it's very hit or miss, I would say. But we do have one question, ergo we have a de facto winner. And the question comes from Theodore Bigby, who actually won a few weeks ago. So we're going to be, and we owe Theodore some swag. I handle the swag department when it's t-shirts, hoodies, those sorts of things. And Jeff handles it when it's his laser etched coasters or his wood coasters. One of these. And Theodore won a couple of weeks ago, so we still owe Theodore some swag. But now, Theodore, you're probably going to get to pick from multiple types.
It's like the carnival where like you play and you win the small prize, but then if you win again, you get a medium prize. So you might be upgraded to a medium prize.
Yeah, keep asking questions, Theodore. We keep them coming. We enjoy them. But anyways, so the question from Theodore is, do you have any tips for in-house marketers and outside consultants to encourage a sales team to contribute to content ideas? Some don't see the benefit of contributing to content marketing. So that really excellent question.
Yeah, it's an amazing question. And the most fundamental thing here is that I don't think most salespeople will ever see the benefit of content marketing because it's not important to them. They don't get any incentive from contributing ideas to you. They're taking extra time off their day to come and help you out. So it's on you to go and keep nagging them. And that's what I do. I set up this. There have been so many times where I've emailed folks, they don't reply, or I get time on their calendar, they don't get on, but I still persevere because I need their perspective on, landing pages or content, because they are the frontline folks talking to customers. And so whenever I can't get on calls with them, I listen to sales calls, recordings, and then I compile a list of questions from that and then make it super personalized. It's very difficult for that salesperson that I'm reaching out to ignore me. And so I would never expect a salesperson just to be like, hey, Alina, I just got like 10 ideas for you. No, that's never happening. You need to go knock on their doors, be nice, and also the other thing about ideas is that people start losing faith in them when they think that you're not following up. So if you do get ideas from your your salespeople or your customer support people, go back and show them what you did with those ideas and how they're moving needles for you. And even if that means that they said swap out this feature section for an FAQ, and you're telling them because we did that, it looks like people are scrolling more through the page, or time on page is increased, things like that. Go back and show them results of what they've done, and maybe they get more excited to share more the next time around. So I wouldn't build on that relationship. That's my number one tip, and show them that what they've contributed is important, and keep asking questions.
Yeah. Who would have thought soft skills are one of the most important aspects of SEO? And I would say that advice doesn't just apply to salespeople. It's really good with developers as well. Developers can be kind of the key holders of getting things done. And if you forget to follow up and show them that thing that they spent an hour or 2 hours or even more time on, that they probably had to sneak into some release or deviate from their regular roadmap, which they, whatever roadmap they're working on, always takes precedent over the SEO stuff, which is usually perceived as like a secret project or a side gig or a nice to have. Going back and showing them the results of the work that they did has a really, really, it has a knack for making them more open to doing things for you in the future, because that they know there's going to be a payoff. So
Yep.
Very, very interesting. I'm going to add a quick bonus question. We did not get to it in the first part, and I really, really wanted to ask the question. So, Alina, you were on the cover, or were you on the cover, or you're going to be on the cover of AdWorld 2021? So, I have to ask about that. What is it like to be on the cover of an actual magazine, and how did you do that?
This is where marketing really did a good job. That's actually just a speaker promo image. It's not really a cover of a magazine.
Damn it.
So, I hate saying that, but like, I love that you believed it for like a second there. Because,
it looked very real.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. Those are fresh ideas. You've got so many virtual events going on today. And the number one reason that I even thought about saying yes to AdWorld was because their designs were just amazing. Their Instagram ads were on point. That's how I noticed them in the first place. And so, yeah, I mean, I hate to break my own bubble here, but that's not an actual magazine.
So disappointed. That's okay. Still cooler than anything Jeff and I have ever been on. So props for that.
See optics, anybody hopping on my profile, that's what they see.
They're going to be like, she's made the cover of a magazine. She must be awesome. All right. So to close out, Theodore, we're going to be reaching out to you with not one, but two different pieces of swag. It's kind of like pieces of flair, which is a great Office Space reference for those of you that have seen that movie. Jeff, take us home.
Sure. So we like to ask all our guests one final question. That is, what words of advice would you give to a person just getting into SEO?
Oh man, I would just say, start talking more. I feel like it's something that's so difficult for freshers to get into because there's so much fear of like being perceived in the wrong way, asking stupid questions, not understanding what people are saying to you. Just a little quick story from when I was in my first 3 months of work. I hopped on a call with, I think, the business lead for APAC for HubSpot. And he told me, I had no idea till date why he even said yes to hopping on that call with me, because my ask, looking back, was so obscure. I was just like, hey, I'd love to chat about inbound marketing with you if you have some time. And yeah, and he said yes. And he just dropped this stat on me. He said HubSpot back then was getting about 50,000 organic leads from their blog. And I was like, what? How is that even possible? That just sounds insane. He said, yeah, that's inbound marketing for you, And the day that I understood how that machinery actually works, I thought about it and I was like, damn, this is what he meant. Of course, we've not hit 50K leads from the blog or anything like that, but divide that by I don't know, maybe like 100, 1,000, and you still get numbers. And so my biggest takeaway was like, just don't be afraid of talking to people. And it's so important, especially when you're starting out, because what you think you know is not what you know. And there's so many different types of routes that you can take in your career. So it was kind of a checklist item for me. I would force myself to speak with one external person every week. And I have to say, it looked like it paid off,
And surprisingly, this industry, as we've found out, as we've interviewed more and more SEOs, people are pretty nice. I mean, of course, there are a few meanies and douchebags and whatnot, but most people are really nice and really accommodating. In this industry, more than most, I think people are willing to take time out of their day to help somebody coming up.
If I could add a quick note in there, talking about nice people. I mean, Cameron, who's been on this podcast, Jackie Chu, who's been on this podcast, Kevin Indig, who's coming on after me. All these people have so much more experience in the industry than I do, but all of them I've had the amazing opportunity to chat with because of, the exact thing that you said. They're willing to be helpful. And, thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So, Alina, where can people find you?
LinkedIn and Twitter. Yep.
Where at on Twitter? What's your handle?
Alina C Benny. That's Alina C Benny on Twitter. And just Alina Benny on LinkedIn.
Excellent. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being flexible with your schedule and willing to work around my vacation. I am literally the world's worst project manager, and when it comes to scheduling things, and Alina was super flexible. But yes, this was another great interview. As Alina said, we've got Kevin Indig coming up. We may experiment with releasing 2 episodes in 1 week just to see what happens. So things may get crazy. But either way, it might be a good chance to listen to 2 episodes back to back, Alina first and then Kevin. So for everybody out there, thanks again for listening. And yeah, we'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.